Okay. Looks like people are in from the waiting room, so we will get started. Welcome everybody. Welcome back for those of you who have been with us since the beginning, and welcome to our newcomers. You're in for a special treat today. I'm Sarah Linda Lichtblau, Director of Education at the Hudson River Museum. And I'm here with my colleague Olivia Cipriano, and it is my pleasure to introduce today's program. Sketchbook Traveler, a virtual workshop series with James McElhinney. Today, we are embarking on the third session, and we are just excited to join author, educator, historian, and journal painter James McElhinney, who is leading this 5-part series of workshops and lectures inspired by the exhibition Landscape Art and Virtual Travel, highlights from the collections of the HRM and Art Bridges, whom we thank for their support of this series. Over the course of these few months, we're visiting sites that resonate with the collections of the Hudson River Museum, and participants are invited to develop their skills for mindful travel through journaling. For today's plein air experience, we accompany the intrepid sketchbook explorer to a mystery location somewhere within the North Country or the Hudson Valley. McElhinney is leading this virtual painting demonstration from an outdoor location, sharing its unique sights and artistic challenges. Now, while the artist has developed a progressive curriculum that provides a thorough introduction to a host of ideas about drawing, watercolor, and the field of plein air painting, you are invited to join any or all of the 5 sessions, all of which are coming to you, again, thanks to the support provided by Art Bridges. In terms of art material, use anything that makes a mark or any service that takes a mark. You can also consult the extensive list of tools and resources for optional supplies, which is accessible on our website and which we will put in the chat as well. Please note your microphones have been muted upon entry and you can control your video camera. We also invite you to use the live transcript closed captioning option at the bottom of your screen. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please type them in the chat throughout the course of the conversation, and the artist will respond throughout the program, which we anticipate will run about 90 minutes. Now, it is my honor to introduce James Lancel McElhinney. A little bit about the artist. He's a visual artist, author, independent scholar, and fine press publisher. He holds an MFA in painting from Yale and a BFA from the Tyler School of Art. McElhinney is the recipient of fellowships and grants, including a 2017 Pollock Krasner grant and a prior visual artist fellowship from the National Endowment for the Arts. McElhinney is the author of Sketchbook Traveler, Hudson Valley, the first in a series of books produced by Schiffer Publishing. His work was recently exhibited in James McElhinney, Discover the Hudson Anew at the Hudson River Museum. His work may be found here at the Hudson River Museum and in numerous public collections, including the Albany Institute of History and Art, the West Point Museum, and the New York Public Library. He encourages you to visit his website at www.mcelhinneyart.com. We also invite you to contact the artist directly with your questions and comments for further inspiration. And following these sessions, by sending your name and email to him at workshops@needlewatcher.com. We'll also put this in the chat, so you'll easily be able to copy it. As I mentioned, this will be the first of 5 sequential workshops, and we hope that you will join us for the 4th installment on July 7th, to be followed by a final critique on August 4th. And we will be sharing information with you about viewing a introduction, an intro video for the July 7th session, as well as the way that you will be able to submit your work for the final critique by the artist, which will be on August 4th. I think at this point, it is time to turn the microphone over to James, who will reveal his location and will explain the format of today's program. James.
Okay, let me turn this off. Welcome.
Sarah Linda, it looks like we lost James. Sarah Linda?
Yes, it looks like we've lost James. So while we are trying to find him again, we thank you all for your patience. Olivia, maybe we should cue something up. Hold on one second.
Should I go into, let me see. Sarah Linda, should I play the intro video or should I play the video that we had queued up to go for the demo? Sarah Linda?
I'm just trying to get in touch with James.
Certainly. Should I
be right back?
Okay.
Okay.
In the meantime, I will be playing the demo video for today's program. Oh, we might have James back.
Yeah, hold on. I guess he's been working on that.
Yeah. It might have been the wind, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly.
Windy out where he is today. Okay, so he's not gonna be, I need to make a co-host.
Okay, everybody hear me now? Okay.
Welcome back, James. Thank you.
Yeah, I think, the next two, let's just open with all of us as co-hosts. This is what I think the problem was I was making my entrance on the phone, and somehow that interfered with the webcast. So anyway, what I wanted to share with everybody was, I don't know if I can do this. Olivia, is Olivia there?
I'm right here. What do you need?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to try to show everybody where we are.
All right.
So I am going to start the video. Here I am.
Fantastic.
Okay. All right. Now I'm going to show everybody where we are. Okay, do you know where we are? Who knows where we are? If you type your answer in the chat, do you know where we are? Very special place today. Any responses? Olivia, are you there?
Yeah. Alyssa actually said Lake George.
Very good. We're on Lake George, and I'll show you exactly what we're going to be painting today. Okay. And if you hold on. There we are. So I've prepared a slideshow which is going to be presented in the form of a video presently, and then when we come back, I'll take some questions, and then we'll get started. So Olivia, do you have the have you got the video queued up?
Yes. I just want to let you know that on our end, or at least on my end, we're seeing black, but for your video right now. So while I play the video, just try and take a look at fixing that. And yeah.
That's where we are. We are at I'm coming to you live from the Sagamore Resort in Bolton Landing on Lake George. And if anybody's ever had occasion to spend any time here, it's terrific. So I'm on the deck. You'll see in the slideshow, it's all explained. But I'm here on the deck. If I turn the camera around, you can see that's what I'm looking at.
That's great. And it's working now, James. That's great. Thank you.
Good. Okay. Well, you know, everybody has to think of these workshops as being like, I'm coming to you on a satellite phone from a combat area or from an erupting volcano. That would be fun. But you know, there are problems with the technology every now and then, and I'm a one-man band. I don't have a whole crew helping me out. So this is just you and me. All right, everybody. So Olivia, you want to roll it? Welcome to Sketchbook Traveler. This will be the third of a 5-part series of virtual workshops presented by the Hudson River Museum. I'm James McElhinney. Today, we'll be zooming from the Sagamore Resort on Green Island in Bolton Landing along the western shore of Lake George, New York, but more on our location later. Lake George was known to the Haudenosaunee as Andiata Rokte, or the lake that shuts itself in. More than 30 miles in length, its waters can reach depths of up to 200 feet. The mountains that rim the lake rise more than 1,000 feet. Samuel de Champlain visited the lake in 1609, naming it Lac de Saint-Sacrement. In James Fenimore Cooper's Last of the Mohicans, Natty Bumpo, Hawkeye, refers to the lake as Horicon, after a fictitious tribe that was said to have once lived in the region. When the British took possession of the area in 1763, Lac du Saint-Sacrement became Lake George, named in honor of the reigning monarch of Great Britain. In 1759, a young artillery officer named Thomas Davies produced this view of Lake George, now in the collection of the Fort Ticonderoga Museum. His point of view is from the former site of Fort William Henry, which had been captured and destroyed by the French 2 years earlier, a dramatic incident recounted in the novel The Last of the Mohicans. This is one of the earliest paintings of the subject known to exist, and indeed one of the earliest paintings of the North American landscape. The French returned in 1820, but not with an army, but in the person of Jacques Gerard Milbert, a naturalist and artist tasked by Louis XVIII with obtaining scientific and geographical information about the United States. After returning to France in 1823, Milbert assembled his notes and drawings into a memoir of his travels. This hand-colored engraving reprises a similar view to that taken by Davies more than 60 years prior. The print culture popularized Milbert's work, which in turn inspired younger artists to revisit his motifs. Here we have a work by the American naïf Thomas Chambers, which appears to be a freewheeling copy of Milbert's Vista. Safe to say. Hudson River School painter Asher Brown Duran often visited Lake George. Here he combines an intimate view of rocks and trees, a subject for which he became famous, with a panoramic view of distant mountains rising from the lake. So by the 1830s, the idea of wilderness as the domain of Satan, a place where prophets went to eat locusts and quarrel with God, had been transformed by the Romantic movement in the arts and by the rise of environmentalism into a salubrious temple of nature, where people could come to keep fit and regain their health. Here's a journal sketch by Daniel Huntington. Such drawings would have been produced partly as a visual travel diary entries, and later perhaps as studies for studio paintings produced for exhibition and sale. Here Jasper Cropsey adopts a point of view similar to that of Duran in this painting, which was recently acquired by the Hudson River Museum. Now, John Frederick Kensat adopts a more radical modern approach. Instead of peering at the lake from behind a screen of rocks and foliage, Kensat puts the viewer right at the water's edge. Lofty mountains rise up from the lake, which is peppered with rocky, wooded islands. The tranquility of the scene is laced with a sense of danger, not only because of its military past, but because the region is famous for an abundance of timber rattlesnakes, a number of whom are known to reside on these islands. And of course, 19th century viewers would have associated the site with Cooper's leather-stocking romances that celebrated the adventure and violence of the American colonial frontier. Martin Johnson Head, who had traveled to the Andes, is less specific. He pushes the mountains into the distance, expanding at once the breadth of the lake and the heavens. Many of his Civil War era landscapes feature solitary figures such as this, which help to establish the scale of the terrain elements. Here, a solitary boatman eases his dory into the lake, another rugged individual just soldiering on. Now, David Johnson takes a more factual topographical approach. A beached rowboat provides a sense of scale, while alluding perhaps to the recreational economy of the region. In the 20th century, artists like Georgia O'Keeffe were inspired by Lake George. The family summer home of her husband, the photographer and art dealer Alfred Stieglitz, was located just north of Caldwell, now Lake George Village, at the head of the lake. Anne Diggory combines historic views with contemporary updated vistas. Here we can see Anne Diggory has adopted a similar point of view as that of David Johnson, but the wooden boat is replaced by an aluminum canoe. A figure wades hip deep into the lake while an inflatable raft rests on the grassy margin of the lake shore. A larger view. So let's take a look at where we are. On the left is a map of Lake George, again in its entirety. The yellow dot marks the position, the point of view of Anne Diggory and David Johnson. Hewlett's Landing. The red dot marks the location of the Sagamore Resort, the location of today's workshop. The narrows are indicated on the right-hand map as a point of reference. This stretch of water, which is choked with lots of islands, represents the boundary between the southern or upper portion of the lake and the northern or lower portion of the lake. So the Sagamore, where's my cursor? Okay. So the Sagamore Hotel opened on July 4th, 1883. The name had been suggested by, of course, the popular novel Last of the Mohicans, in which one of the characters is Tamenund, an Algonquian sachem or tribal elder with a title of Sagamore. Because much of the novel takes place in the Lake George region, it seemed like good marketing to make the connection between Cooper's frontier yarn and the swanky new hotel. Over the years, the Sagamore underwent a series of expansions and improvements. You can see here the very earliest iteration. Now it's got a bigger porch, and then, of course, after the fires, it was rebuilt to look like this. Fires in 1893 and 1914 devastated the structures. Each time they were rebuilt to be bigger and better than ever. The bottom image is very close to what exists there today. If you're suffering a number of financial challenges, in 1981, the Sagamore ceased operations. New owners purchased, renovated, and expanded the hotel, and in 1983, the Victorian pile was placed on the National Register of Historic Places. The hotel changed hands again in 2008, and today is the premier hospitality venue on Lake George, offering luxury accommodations, fine dining, golf, swimming, and lake cruises. So today I will be coming to you from the upper terrace atop the south-facing White House-style colonnade indicated by the red dot. That's where we'll be. I just want to mention also that a link to this video, here we go, there's a close-up, that is where I will be. That is where I am. So, this is really a wonderful place. Very, very worthwhile. Worth the money, worth the time. I've done it a couple of times, no regrets. I'd go back. So I wanted to mention too that a link to this video is available for you to watch anytime. Just send a request to workshop@needlewatcher.com, or if you've got a mobile phone handy, you can take a photograph of the QR code or just point your camera at it and it will take you to the link, to the email link. There is also a private Facebook page, Sketchbook Traveler Base Camp, which is open to those who have taken my workshops or who are actively engaged in visual journaling. You're all invited to join. Please mention that you were here on today's Zoom. Now, have we any questions?
Okay, and James. All right. So we invite you to put any questions or comments in the chat. And James, until then, take it away.
Well, I think we can unmute people at this point. I mean, let's just unmute. You know, we can address a few questions, and then maybe take a short break. And
Yeah.
then we can come back, and we'll paint. I would invite everybody to have their camera ready, because then you can take a screenshot of our location, and if you want to work along, you can. So, are there any questions?
We do. We have one question from Ronan. Why did most of the painters paint Lake George from a shoreline perspective compared to looking down from the mountains?
Well, Ronan, there are two answers to that question. One is that the mountains are full of rattlesnakes, especially Tongue Mountain, which is actually, if you go by in a canoe along the shoreline, there are signs warning people about rattlesnakes. So it's a very snaky area. But I think also there are not very many clear prospects. There is a mountain at the southern end called Prospect Mountain that has views. But I think in the 19th century, a lot of the painters like John Frederick Kensat and Asher B. Durand and David Johnson, etc., were really drawn to the drama of these mountains coming up out of the lake. And, you know, it does remind one a little bit of some places in like Acadia National Park in Maine, you know, where the mountains come right out of the ocean. And I think that's part of it. And I think also it's, you know, these guys were not really explorers. They were staying in a hotel or like a rooming house. They wanted to be able to get somewhere where they could walk to with all their stuff in a matter of an hour or less. So, you know, places like, for instance, you think about Catskill Mountain House, North-South Lake area near Haynes Falls, Tannersville, New York, just west of Catskill. I mean, there's a big hotel there. So, I mean, these guys were, a lot of these artists were actually sort of the first tourists, and they were helping to create the tourist industry the same way that artists like Thomas Moran and Albert Bierstadt helped inspire the Congress of the United States to create national parks, you know, with their paintings of Yellowstone and the Rocky Mountains and the Grand Canyon and so forth. So it's a good question. I mean, I'll ask my dear wife, who's an art historian of some note, but I think she'd probably, that's what she would probably say, is that you know, these guys were not going to climb up those mountains necessarily, and you know, they don't want to be, you know, more than an hour away from a warm meal, unless they're in a camp somewhere up in the Allagash or the Adirondacks or some wild place. Any other questions?
Not currently in the chat. So I think we can move on.
All right, let's take 5-minute break. I want to have your cameras ready so that I can show you the view and you can take a shot of it. Hold on. Well, if you saw this rig, you would be impressed. It's a kind of a Rube Goldberg steampunk pile of wires and booms and cameras and so forth. Something out of Jules Verne. I'll get this image up in a minute. Any other questions? And like Sarah Linda said, you can use anything to draw with. You don't have to. This is not an art class. This is how to become more engaged in the environment class. And I think using drawing and writing are terrific ways to do that. So okay, there we go. If you have a camera, hold on, let me reposition this. Hold on.
James and Olivia, there were some questions about the sharing the video
Oh yeah.
from the last session.
Yes,
And-
Sarah Linda, as we discussed, I think early last week that I was working on putting the video together for YouTube.
Exactly.
So that I can get that up. So I'm in the progress of that, and it should be up by the end of the week. So hopefully I can get that out.
Yes, I know some people have asked that privately and some in the public chat. So I just wanted to let everybody know that we're working on it. And what I will do is share the link to other videos of programs that were inspired by landscape art and virtual travel. And you can find the video of James's first session there that has already been uploaded. So I'm going to put that in the chat for everybody now.
Okay, so let's take a 5-minute break and I'll get everything going. I'll get the other devices working and we can resume. And I'll have one of the cameras on the motif. You can take a photograph of it. I can switch back and forth while I'm working too. So we'll do the best we can. This has been a great learning experience trying to figure out how to interact with people online with multiple image feeds. So, all right, well, everybody be well, and we'll see you in a couple of minutes.
Okay, James, thank you.
If anybody's listening, there's one. No, wait, where's the view? There's the view. There's the motif.
Looks like people are still coming back from their break. James, the movement on the water is extraordinary.
Of water. I mean, areas of it are up to 200 feet deep. Other areas are not, obviously, but yeah, it's a remarkable piece of water. And I think when you think of it together with Lake Champlain, what we have here is a super highway, an aquatic super highway that during pre-colonial days and even up until the invention of railroads was a major route for commercial cargo vessels between New York City and Montreal, because you would go up the Hudson and then you would do a short like a 10-mile or 5-mile portage over to Lake Champlain or to Lake George, and then come up the lake and unload everything, do another 3-mile jaunt down along the Lachute River to Ticonderoga, where you're in Lake Champlain. Lake Champlain goes all the way up to the Richelieu River, which drains into the St. Lawrence about 30 miles downstream from Montreal. So yeah, it was prior to the opening of the Erie Canal, it was the major water route, and it was hotly contested during the Revolutionary War and during the French and Indian War, known in Europe as the 7 Years' War. But it was quite a strategic body of water. And if anybody has seen the movie or read the book, The Last of the Mohicans, or any of the movies, there's so many of them have been made. But one of the key events is the attack of and surrender of Fort William Henry, which is now Lake George Village, so at the head of the lake. So I think James Fenimore Cooper's novels really helped spur interest in the region. And also, if you think about people like Cotton Mather, Puritan New Englanders, they looked upon the wilderness as the domain of the devil, and it had to be tamed by the Bible and the sword. And by the 19th century, it had taken on a romantic appeal. And by the end of the 19th century, it was a place where people would come to recover from TB or to get sort of, health cures and colonics and water cures and other things. Adirondacks too. There were a lot of people who came to Saranac Lake for tuberculosis, like the writer Robert Louis Stevenson. Anyway. Why is this one not working? Hold on. For some reason, the camera that's on me, oh, here we go. That is so weird. How is that?
So we're seeing the lake right now.
Oh, wait a minute. This is virtual background, mirror my image. There we go. Hold on. Okay, that's what we're looking at today. Sorry, the image was mirrored. I don't know what's wrong with camera number 2. Hold on. Is everybody back in?
It looks like people are back. Mhm.
Yeah, okay, we'll get rolling in a minute. For some reason, hold on. I've got a little technical problem, so let's.
So Ronan's, while you're doing that, James, Ronan asked a question about what is your favorite place to hike around Lake George? If anybody,
I think there's so many great hikes. I would say the last place to go would be Tongue Mountain because it's full of rattlesnakes. But I think there are plenty of hikes, especially on the western or the eastern shore of the lake, which is less populated. And you can go to places like Hewlett's Bay, and there are a number of well-marked trails. If you want to send me an email, I'll email you some links. And let's see if we can get this camera rolling again.
yeah, if anybody in the audience has any suggestions about favorite places to hike around Lake George, just put them in the chat, please.
Yeah, that's the best idea. Okay. All right. Well, we're having a few, let me see, technical. This is why I need a crew. Hold on. It was all working a minute ago. Hold on. I'm gonna leave and come back on. So just let me
Okay.
We didn't know we were going to need like intermission music. That's
Yeah, we should have queued some up.
we should
I should have wrote
some
something.
music. But just thinking about the best places to hike around Lake George, it just makes me think about the wonderful Last of the Mohicans movie with Daniel Day-Lewis from a number of years ago. I don't know if anytime I'm upstate, starting up in Columbia County, even just the music that Enya wrote for the soundtrack just courses through my head all the time. And it's very historic country. It's just so beautiful.
Oh, we have a great question in the chat from Clinton. What's on exhibit right now at the HRM? And we're kind of in the middle of getting a new exhibition up, but we also have the ongoing exhibition, Landscape Art and Virtual Travel, which this program is in conjunction with, correct, Sarah Linda?
That is absolutely correct. What I'm going to do now, Clinton, for you is put some links in the chat so you can see what's on exhibit right now. We also have through the end of June, we have Librado Romero, From the Desert to the River. And we also have a wonderful exhibit about that brings together art and science in a Skywatchers exhibit. And actually there is a tour coming up this Saturday of that very exhibit. So I'm going to put a bunch of links in the chat for everybody right now, so you can choose what you would be interested in. And I will also put links into the upcoming summer programs for everybody. Okay, so hang on, I'm going to mute myself and go into the website and take care of that now. Be back in a minute.
Great. Okay. And let's take a look. All right, James. I see the lake. You're just muted right now. Oh, and I see, yeah, and it switched right back to
all right.
Your pants. Yep.
I'm having you may have to live without seeing me, but we're in good shape here. I've got, okay, so does everybody have something to work with? If you want to follow along, that would be great. Trying to get this, get the whole thing in. All right, so what I've done here is I'm just going to adjust this a little bit so we can get more. Get a little more. All right, how's that? So what I've got today is, again, I'm using the Core watercolors, the QOR watercolors. This is a new product from Golden Paints. I highly recommend it. Very strong tinting power, and also it's a new kind of chemistry for watercolors. It's no longer gum Arabic. It's a synthetic resin, but it's non-toxic and it's all good. Okay, so here we go. Adjust this a little bit. So what I've done, I did earlier, I've gotten the drawing to a certain point where I framed it out, I measured it out. You can see the law of thirds, quadrants. It's just note to self so that I can remind myself what I'm looking at. And now the challenge is going to be how to set this up quickly so that I can begin to deal with the light. I can begin to respond to the light in space. If you look at the drawing closely, I'm using, again, this is not necessarily my style, but I'm using a technique that was used by people like Paul Sanby and others, which is just to draw with dots, actually, in this case, over a graphite layout. So that's how this is beginning. So I've got my composition laid out. Let me zoom back out. You can see the whole thing. All right. Natty Bumpo with a paintbrush. All right, so first thing to do would be, at least what I'm going to do, is I'm going to just try to take just a warm color and create just sort of a warm tone by the horizon, because this is, it's just what I'm seeing. Maybe a little yellow in it, and not with any great precision. You're just looking now. Stop worrying about trying to produce a work of art. Just think about seeing what you're looking at. And I know that if I'm going to paint clouds, that they're going to change by the minute. So I'm just going to create a sort of a texture. And then maybe the other thing you don't want to do is you don't want to, here we'll look at the motif again. You don't want to literally kind of color match what you're looking at. You want to think about what's going on. Let's say, have a look at the color of the lake in the foreground versus the color of the lake in the distance. And the color of the lake in the foreground, it seems like it's a darker color. So I'm gonna maybe lay down like a violet in the foreground. Does anybody know how to make a violet into a blue? What do you mix with violet to make blue? Anybody know?
Well, there are no answers in the chat, but I believe it's magenta, right? Or a red tone?
No.
No? What color then?
Green.
Oh,
Because blue, purple is basically a mixture of red and blue, and the complement is yellow. So if you mix purple with green, then the yellow in the green cancels out the purple, leaving the blue as the dominant hue. Make sense? It makes sense?
yeah, it does.
Yeah. So that's so you want to never literally lay down the color that you're not painting a powder room. So you don't want to just lay down the color that it would seem to be. Hardware store with a swatch book, So I'm trying to form an idea at this point. I'm not really, I don't know if you can see this that well. I'm not trying to create a photographic image. I'm trying to figure out what's a good idea to represent the experience I'm having right now. All right. So at this point, what I might do would be to go in and take, where's this blue? This is my Schminke Horadam set on the right and my core on the left. I'm going to just delineate.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, ask.
We had a question in the chat, wondering if the green used was Viridian green.
That wasn't a green. A Viridian is a kind of no, I didn't use any green yet.
Oh, okay.
No green yet. If you're seeing green, you better go see your doctor. I haven't used any green. If you're seeing green, there may be a problem. So at this point, I'm just taking notes. I'm sort of thinking, how do I want to structure the color? What kind of color story do I want to tell? It's not a question of realism and duplicating optical experience. It's a matter of creating a structure for a new experience. And that's really what you're trying to do here, is you're trying to describe what hopefully will exist as a memory. All right, so this is very light, and this is sort of how I would proceed. Now I'm going to take a few risks. I'm going to take some of this blue, some of this violet, mix of violet. No, the color I'm using here is alizarin crimson, ultramarine blue, sort of old friends. And if you want to knock the chroma, the intensity off of a color, just add a little of its complement. Okay, so now I'm seeing there's this mass of clouds. And again, I'm not worried about, if you can see this, it's just laying it down very quickly, because this is all going to dry a lot lighter than it looks right now. So now what I'm going to do, and here we'll go back and look at the motif again. Am I still dark? Yeah, I'm still dark. I don't know why, because I can. So there's the motif. And here's the work surface. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to give a little more of the definition to those mountains in the distance. I'm going to mix a little of my core watercolors with my schminke, which is not supposed to happen, but they're my watercolors. I'll do what I want with them. So I'm just going to give this a little more contrast. And this is the other point I want to make to everybody, is that, you know, when I sort of gave up painting in oils and started painting with acrylic and watercolors, everybody said, oh, watercolor is such an unforgiving medium, which I think is perfect nonsense. It's just a matter of, if you can see what I'm doing here, I'm loading the brush and just dropping the color onto the surface. It's not distressing the dried watercolor underneath, which could be activated by water. But mine is not, because I'm not painting in a very insistent way. I'm just letting it build up gradually. And the whole idea behind that is to reveal as you discover. You know, I'm looking and working in a kind of interrogative way, posing questions. And gradually, as things come together, I see more, I can make better decisions, I can be more decisive, I can decide what I'm going to give priority and what I'm going to try to get rid of. And I mean, you might be asking, what happens if you make a mistake? Well, there are no mistakes. There are only decisions. And actually, when I teach drawing, I forbid the use of erasers. That was a trick that I picked up from Bernie Chait and Phil Grousman, that they would refuse to let their students draw with erasers. And so you have to start with like a 4H pencil and search for the form, and then gradually go to darker and darker, softer and softer pencils as you discovered it. And so I think that's a good way to draw, because that means that it's not just about making something, it's about teaching yourself what you behold. So I made this comment on one of our, I think it was on the Sketchbook Traveler on the Basecamp site. I put up like a fortune cookie and said, you know, that the art can't exist in the object if it doesn't already exist in the practice. So I really feel like the practice is the art, and the painting, or like whatever comes afterwards, well, that's just a bonus. That the real art is the doing. As Lee Krasner said, when I'm thinking about painting, I'm painting. So now I might take a little yellow and introduce a slight glaze here, just to pull that forward a bit. I might do the same here and here. Getting windy, hold on. And, you know, as a rule, warmer colors advance and cooler colors recede spatially. So a warmer color is going to pull the eye forward. It's like Hans Hofmann, you all are aware of, I hope, said that in nature, light makes color, and art, color, and painting, color makes light. And his whole idea was to push and pull spatially with warm and cool colors and with neutral and saturated colors. So I might want to give this a little more juice. And again, this is not necessarily my style. What I'm trying to do here is sort of an updated, you know, Paul Sandby type watercolor where, you know, it's basically a tinted drawing. And it's basically more interested in the topographical, well, the poetry of data as opposed to, let's say, the poetry of a personal response. And these guys were trying to find a way to paint landscapes that was not incompatible with map making. Any questions yet? You can unmute everybody if you want, Olivia. Any questions yet?
Not in the chat. Everyone should still have the ability to mute and unmute freely if they would like to ask anything.
Okay, all right. So at this point, I'm beginning to see kind of some, the core watercolors are really intense. So I'm trying to mix a kind of orange, kind of dull orange, maybe put a little Naples yellow in it. So Phil Garrett, if he's on this, he's probably saying, no, don't mix. Core is pure. Sorry, Phil. So now I'm looking at my painting, I'm thinking, okay, I think what this needs is it needs sort of a warm color along the horizon. So I'm going to do that. Just to punch the cooler colors that are in the foreground, or the mountains, I should say. And maybe the negative spaces to juice them a little bit too. If you know the work of John Marin, I think a wonderful painter who really was very inventive, working from observation, but also really abstracting from observation. So you see what that does? That gives me a little more contrast. And now I could come back with, let's say, a more saturated blue. And again, just sort of lay a glaze. To give it a little more intensity. And I'm glazing with watercolor. And people say it can't be done. It's easy. You just have to pay attention and learn how to load the brush with just enough paint, and then not scrub the color that's underneath. Now what I'm doing here is I'm looking, there are all these points of land. Let's go back to the motif. And they're kind of overlapping. And So you want to try to figure out what's in front of what. And I'm continuing to explore. I'm beginning to think this mountain here is much darker. But I don't want to try to get the color, the quote unquote the color, because it's actually a layering of many colors. And so you see the space is beginning to read. That's kind of painter talk for what you can start to see what's in front of what. And so now I might take a little of this yellow and introduce a glaze here. I might put a little more here. I might do some on this hillside to pull it forward. I might take a blue, and this is very patient business. You just have to take your time and look. If you don't look, you're not going to discover. The goal here is not to make, but to discover. I remember when I was teaching at the Art Students League of New York, there was one person who was always, one student who was always trying to, he was always trying to complete a drawing, always trying to finish it. And one day I just got really frustrated with him. I said, look, just take a trust fall. Study the process. Live in the process and study the form, and the rest will take care of itself. And I hear from across the room this guy say, he's right. And I turn around, it's Tony Bennett. He had just come into my class. He was there for about a month. Anyway, has everybody heard of Tony Bennett? He was a very nice man. He had a beautiful girl with him and a bodyguard. And they drew. They were pretty good. He was a lovely guy and a real artist. Any questions yet? Okay, so you can see I'm going back and forth. I'm sort of inserting a blue I'm going to darken this a little bit. And it's just a matter of, it's not a matter of coloring in the drawing. It's a matter of the color dancing with the line. Sounds corny, but that's really kind of what it is. It's, you know, they're talking to each other. The color represents a more sensual response. The line is more intellectual. It's more of an idea. Because lines don't exist in nature. You've never seen a line in nature and never will. A line is a graphic representation of an idea. Any questions?
None in the chat.
Really? All right.
Yeah, none in the chat right now.
If people are shy, they can just reach out to me directly. I'm happy to. And if you want to join the base camp, Sketchbook Traveler base camp, Facebook group. It's growing. I think we have about 40 or 50 people now, and it's growing. So
Right. Don't forget, if something just occurs to you, you can unmute yourself and
anybody can ask a question now. You don't need to go through the chat. You can just shout out if you have a question. Just doing a broadcast. Yeah. You can just speak up.
And I do want to remind everybody, I put it in the chat earlier, but I will copy it and repost it in the chat. We have the direct email to James, so you can reach out to him at any point after this session if something occurs to you, or you want to ask him something about a developing image. That's at workshops@needlewatcher.com, and I will put that in the chat yet again. And I think we do have a new message, Olivia, right? So.
Correct, yes. So Ronan wanted to ask, what do you think of adding extra motifs into your painting that are not actually there, such as wildlife, boats, etc.? Should that be done when you are more advanced?
Oh, sure. I mean, the thing is, it's your experience. I mean, if there was a duck on the lake for a minute, you know, I mean, it's not photography. Although I love, don't get me wrong, some of my best friends are photographers, but I think that you know, you're not bound by like literal data. In fact, if you look at the painters from the Hudson River School, they're taking great liberties. In fact, you look at anybody, look at Turner, look at Constable, look at Coho, you know, you go, they're not just painting what they see or what they behold, they're describing their experience of beholding it, if that makes any sense. So the thing is, what this is about, this is not about painting what is, but painting what you're experiencing. You know, you're creating, I got to keep going back to this idea that, and a quote, a dear old late friend of mine, is that art is just a structure for an experience. And I think that it's true. And if you're going to pick up a pencil or a pen or a brush, and even if you're not confident in your skill, you know, don't worry about being factual. Just work to be honest about what you're experiencing and what it looks like to you, because that's where the art abides. You know, that's why we're here. We're here to learn how to teach ourselves what we behold and in ways that might improve us. And whether or not any of you end up making art out of that, well, that's great, more power to you, but it's not necessary. And like I think I said the last time, I said, if you can't draw with confidence, draw with abandon, and you'll learn confidence. Here we go, back to this.
Okay, now we have a more technical question. How does working in plein air in watercolors differ in regards to drying time versus working in watercolors indoors?
Oh, it's working outdoors, which is en plein air just means outdoors, but working outdoors, yeah, I mean, if you're working in sunlight, like here, we're kind of overcast, it's getting windy. So it's not different than working indoors, But yeah, if you're working outside and you're working in bright sunlight, you know, the minute the color hits the page, it's going to dry. And so that just simply changes the way you have to address loading the brush, applying the color to the page. And the only way to learn that is by doing it. And I think also there's something to be said for like a one-shot painting. I remember I spent a day with Fairfield Porter, who was a wonderful painter back when I was at Yale, and he said it was pointless to go to paint outdoors 2 days in a row because it's like going to two different places. The light's different. You know, somebody could have chopped a tree down in the middle of the night. You never know. So it's and there was another artist named Victor Arica, who was a very interesting painter and a friend of a friend, who was, he never worked on a painting more than one shot. And a lot of them were posed nudes and portraits, but he never worked on them for more than one session. So anyway, any questions? This is...
Yes, I have one. My mountains look flat and I know it's overcast. So how can I make it more three-dimensional?
With color and with, I mean, you have to look at the topography, or if you're just looking at the shape, you're already lost. Let me do something here to, so now that you raise that question, I'm going to say, hold on. What is going on? Oh. Okay, I'm going to adjust this so that we can see this idea. So I'm looking at this mountain, which is there on the left in this image. If you look at it carefully, it's hard not being actually on location. But if I look at that mountain, I begin to see there's topography, and one of the ways I could describe that might be to take a contrasting color like a yellow and begin to note begin to see that this is coming up to that, this is coming across, this is coming down, this is coming across. So I could use this contrasting color basically as a drawing tool to try to figure out the modeling or the topography of that mountain. Okay.
Mhm.
Here. Sorry, I had it on the motif. So what I did was I laid down some warm colors here.
Okay.
Right. Now, the riposte, the call and reply would be to go in again with the cool darks. And juice the negative areas. So the color models the form. All painting is drawing with color. That's all it is.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I see what you're doing now.
Yeah, people have spilled a lot of ink and polluted the air with a lot of blather about what painting is. All painting is drawing with color. You know, I mean, I could go in here and start, you know, beginning to discover individual trees, just by like laying down darks, the little critter there. And basically it's a pattern. What your experience is retinally is pattern of light and shadow, different wavelengths and vibrations that we apprehend as color. So like that. Now I could probably work on this for a few more hours, but let me just zoom it back a little bit. You can see it there. So it's an idea. What I'm trying to do here is not reproduce what's there. What I'm trying to do is describe my experience of looking at it. And I'm structuring that with drawing, with mapping, with warm and cool colors. I'm gonna, hold on a minute. I think we need to address everybody now. Watch this. So, what happened? All right. All right, so I'm back. So what we have is this. And oh, by the way, I think it was Ronan who was asking about Strathmore. This is a Strathmore watercolor sketchbook. It's got sort of a brown faux leather cover, but the paper is absolutely, it's very thick. And this is all my demos, from other classes. So, but yeah, this is a good book. I prefer, as you know, something smaller, just because I can carry it in my pocket. This is a little bulky. I guess I could if I wanted to. So, let me see. Could I put it in my pocket? Actually, I could. So, any questions? You want to unmute? You want to? But you're going to have to say goodbye to my flowing locks. Tomorrow I'm getting my hair cut.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
Yes.
No. I guess it's definitely post-COVID, huh?
The COVID experience is almost over. But anyway, it's getting warm, and at least I feel lucky that most of my friends of my same age are either gray or bald, and I'm neither. So I should knock wood and be grateful. Plus, I have to give a barber some work.
Yeah.
Support the
So
economy.
so generous. Olivia, I think there's, I'm just going through, there may be a question. Did we answer? Let's see.
God, a lot in the chat.
Yeah, we answered.
We answered all of them about the
Yeah.
drawing. We answered the drawing time for watercolors.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
Okay, I missed that one.
Yeah,
I see Ronan's asking.
you're
a
one more though.
question. I see Ronan's asking a question saying, you can work on one painting and then come back later to finish it, right? A painting is never rushed. That's true. That's true. I think if you're talking about studio work, that's true. In fact, when I'm working in the studio, me personally, I usually have 6 or 7 paintings going at once. I just go from one to the other. It's like you're like a bee going from flower to flower. I just, it's kind of, they all talk to each other. They all teach each other. They all let each other know what they want. So yeah, no, you don't have to rush it. But I think when you're in the field, I think it's about that moment. It's not about making a painting. It's about connecting with nature, connecting with your environment at that moment. So it becomes a document of that moment. And I look at Cézanne's watercolors. By the way, there's a show opening in New York of drawings and watercolors by Cézanne at MoMA. So,
Hmm.
you know, he was the master of reaching a complete thought without having a finished painting. And so he's a very good person to look at, not for his style, but for his practice. I mean, this is the mistake I think everybody made about Cézanne, is that they ignored the fact that he was deeply interested in geology and science, and they just talked about his style because of how it influenced Picasso and Braque. But actually, if you have a look at his drawings and watercolors and think about them as his practice, that he's mapping his experience moment by moment, and over time it assembles itself into a complete idea. And whether that or not that becomes a finished painting, you know, anyway. I mean, everybody has their own reason for going outside and making marks on a page in response to what they're feeling and experiencing. And all I'm trying to do is to, you know, offer you some thoughts about how you can pay attention and how you can get more out of that experience. And I don't think you have to be a trained artist to do it. I don't think you have to have gone to art school, or I think anybody who can make a mark. Thomas Gimbreed, who was the head of the drawing academy at West Point in 1819, when they changed the curriculum and required second and third year cadets to take 2 hours of drawing every day, he said, drawing is all straight lines and curved lines. Anyone can draw a straight line, anyone can draw a curved line, therefore anyone can draw. And it's interesting because his successor was a guy named Robert Weir, whose son John Ferguson Weir was the first dean of the Yale School of Art, where I went. So this Yale, like West Point connection, a lot of people don't know about.
James,
Anyway,
yeah, I wish I had written down all the bon mots that you've been saying today. I mean, there's so many wonderful observations about what art is, what drawing is, what painting is. And I have a question. That which do you prefer to work in a larger format like that, or in the smaller sketchbook? Journal?
it
Doesn't matter.
I think, I mean, I'm doing this because it's easier for people to see.
Sure.
I work in my smaller sketchbooks because it's easier to turn into publications. It's also smaller. It's the same size as my mobile phone. So, you know, the book and the mobile phone, hold on, I can show you, are the same size. So I don't know, maybe I'll let my hair grow out again when I get a, you know, like 12-pack abs and a cast in the Tarzan movie. But right now, let me, so here's my new Adirondack sketchbook. Okay. And here is one of my journal pages, and another one. I mean, this is a lot of stuff. Okay. But the beauty of it is,
Unbelievable. Yeah.
same size. And so I have my two handheld devices.
Who is this at, James? Your iPhone sized sketchbook.
Moleskin watercolor sketchbook. 3.5 by 10 inches landscape binding.
Thank you.
So,
That's great.
you know, it's a natural panorama. Panorama in my pocket. So see, this is old and new. I'm a time traveler. Well, it's like the show at Hudson River Museum. We had 19th century works and we had my works.
Right.
And it was sort of dialoguing across time. I love that.
Yeah, and I think, you know, like your comments about Cezanne, I thought were just so wonderful because you're talking about geological time as well as
Well, yeah. I mean, that's part of it. I mean, in the introductory PowerPoint, I gave a little, you know, art history lesson about people who had come here to paint, but also about where we're painting, the Sagamore Resort on Lake George. And which, here we are. Where is it? There we go. Oh, no, you're not on that. I can't show you that. Yeah, and I think other places we're going, like where we're going to go next, is a place of historical importance, the American Revolution. It's also a very interesting place geologically.
it's, that's a great segue, James.
That's, you want to find out more, you're going to have to tune in on July 7th.
July 7th. We don't even know. And we're very excited to see where James takes us next. And you'll get to see him with his new hair. Although, you know, in a truly revolutionary spirit, you could just tie it back. I mean, I'm just.
Yeah, but I live with a woman who told me if I ever showed up with a man bun that I would be sleeping in the shed. So.
All right, I would take that woman seriously.
Well, you know her, so you know she's no one to be trifled with.
And I just want to thank you again so much. There's a list in the chat of all the upcoming dates, July 7th, August 4th, and then some other related programs to the exhibit.
Right.
But I want to thank you, James, for this setup and for how you figured this out. I am so impressed, and we are also so grateful for everybody's patience, you know, with this new technology. You can see James has a tent. He's got like, this setup is just becoming more and more sophisticated.
I need tech support though. I need to hire somebody to come along with me and make sure that everything's working. I mean, everything was working and then it wasn't. So
that's just.
But we soldiered on, we improvised, I hope everybody got something out of it. And I will post a photograph of this on the Facebook page, the Sketchbook Traveler Base Camp. And also if you send me an email, I will send you a link to a private page on my website that has all of the videos and other things related to the workshops.
I hope. What more encouragement do we need, James? Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah Linda.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Olivia.
Thank you. It was great.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Wonderful. It was wonderful. Yeah.
James, thank you.
Okay, well, everybody be well and feel free to reach out if you have any questions. And, you know, I know that sometimes, you know, people are shy to pose questions online, but, you know, I mean, we'll just keep the conversation going, keep kicking the can down the road, and we'll see everybody on July 7th.
Yes. And
when I'll be painting on an Ordovician fossil reef of limestone.
Ooh.
Okay, okay, I guess people can get in touch with you at workshops at
Right.
sketchbook.com and guess where they're going to be, and maybe there'll be a prize if somebody guesses.
I might do a little sneak preview about a week before, so people can bone up on the history and geology. But I think you get so much more if you're traveling. And prior to COVID, as you know, Kathy and I did we were constantly on the road, and I would always read about where I was going if it was a place I'd never been before. You know? And also try to study the language a little bit so that I could at least, order a meal. But we end up going back to the same places like Venice and London and so forth, but at work related. Anyway, so everybody be well.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, enjoy June, and we'll see you next month. Thank you all again.
Yes, indeed.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.